Большое спасибо, что пригласили.
Thank you very much for inviting myself, humble lawyer. Well, actually, all the compliments that you gave to me are true. Are true. I deserve them. I've brought some of my books here. There are about 100 stories in 2 of these books. I have published the 3rd book recently. And I'm very happy to share the stories about famous people. Sometimes I change their names, sometimes I don't. For example, Philip Kirkorov, the Russian pop star, likes me to describe him to as much details as possible. And I've brought these books not for nothing. You can ask me questions. If I like your question, I'll give you a book for free. And then if you need more books, let me know. Just send me an email. I think the writers can give their books as a gift, whereas the publishing house should sell his or her books. So speaking about public figures, how you should work with public figures, with the stars. I think any kind of business which is represented in this room should have some flagships, so to say, some public figures that would be a magnet attracting others. Because a person who can address the audience from a stadium, from the stage, a person who is famous in politics or in culture, can do a lot for your business development. So who is this public figure? Have you ever thought about the miserable fate, miserable destiny of such public figure? Because I can tell you from my experience, because I have become such public figure recently. So what kind of people we talk about? So public figures are very easy to hurt. They're very fragile kind of people because lots of fans attack them. For example, I'm very far from show business, even though I'm very close to it. And you can't imagine how many people come to me at different parties in the restaurants, asking me for a selfie and other things. I have a radio program, so people write me. They give me, they propose to marry. So all kind of people you can imagine, both sexes, and I don't sing, I don't dance, I don't play football. I can imagine what happens to those people that are that really perform on the stage, who dance, for example, or who sing. People think all sorts of crazy things about us. For example, people think that I have many children, even though I have just 4 children. Okay, let's say 5 children. Okay, 6 children, if I think really hard, but not as many that I read in the newspapers and on the internet. So the person who has become a public figure can really have friends, can really have people that he can rely on among bankers, lawyers, notary offices. So I can give you an example. Several years ago, I was a young guy. I was living in Paris. I did some work, and I had to open a restaurant, and it became very fashionable, very trendy. there were crowds of people. And once Brigitte Bardot came to this restaurant. Oh, Brigitte Bardot. So I was called. So I came there immediately. And Brigitte Bardot told me, I like you. She used tu instead of vous. I really like your restaurant. I'm going to visit you, making sure there are no journalists here. So, and I remember her point very well, because some people, some famous people are different, because, you know, they say, I want to be talked about all the time. I want to be in the spotlight all the time. So when you ask this, when you meet a famous person, you have to ask him, do you want me to talk about you? Does the audience want information about you? So please give me this right. Or maybe we'll just work a little bit and then we'll decide.
You will not be to blame for this information appearing sometime in the public space, because you can be seen together. Your public client will say that he visited this bank, he is not happy. He may skip a word and this news will become public. But if sometime without your permission it comes from you, then you will lose this client forever. And the most important thing which is in the profession of a person who offers services, be it a notary, lawyer, or a banker, and a public figure, no matter whether he's a dancer, sportsman, or a minister, is that without the permission of such person, you cannot do anything. But once you have his or her permission, you should use it not in your own interest. It will serve your interest anyway. He should use it in the interest of this person. You cannot say a bad word about him. You can disclose some secrets. Yes, our client is minister such and such, or our client is the Olympic champion or football player, if you have this right. As I said, it is a very important thing. This people are very vulnerable, and public persons are easily deceived. And I came across the situation again and again. They're attacked by a crowd, and then they introduce to someone, to a bank or to a broker, and how he starts to believe this person who is not from the crowd, who is not from the mob. And it becomes his beacon. He goes to this person, bringing all his money there. But at the time when he understood that he is being deceived, well, it will become common knowledge, a very dangerous thing. It's very dangerous to make a mistake in dealing with a public figure. Then you won't be able to stop him. He believes him to be a star, and it's quite grounds to it. And he is a high jumper, or anyway, footballer, Olympic champion, etc. And everyone wants to make a picture with him. And a girl pierced the stomach of some person with a rapier, etc. She is a star in her own rights. And everyone greets her like president, etc. Try to make a mistake with such a client, but try to refuse this client and say that I'm not going to deal with you. It's dangerous to deal with you. And you should weight pros and contras before you shake hands with a client and say you are with me forever. You should weigh your circumstances and to see whether I can give something to this person. And what is the, let's say, payback for any mistake that they commit. Not only myself, my secretary, my staff. When a public person comes to me, and plenty of people know our show business, and aides, secretaries, a girl serving coffee, to come with a selfie and say that that's Baskov and myself, yes. And Nikolai Baskov came to my office because he came to a person, to a lawyer, to a person to whom he trusts his life. And probably he doesn't know at all that the secretary of lawyer Dobrovinsky will make a selfie with him and will show it to God knows whom. And Mr. Timothy, an other known person who was an opponent of my client, he came and brought a whole van load of journalists to negotiations who were to know that he came with an amicable proposal to me, etc., to settle the dispute. In each case, you should think where dealings with these people lead you. It may elevate you to God knows what height. If this person has trust in you, his colleagues and others will say, then, well, my God, I can trust my life to him. But the situation with a public figure may drop you into an abyss. In what public people are interested? They're interested in everything that a normal, non-public person is interested in. Without doubt, the wishes of a public person to be and to live better and easier than he or she lives now. If he can offer something in the sphere, he will accept that, starting from citizenship and to new conditions of bank services, etc. Before you throw yourself into the stream of dealing with public figure, I thought, how do I approach a public figure? How to approach a public figure and say, just, well, you're a people's artist of the Soviet Union. Be my client, kindly. These people will start laughing. To start with, you should in some way become a known person and a public person in a way. If you're no one and no one knows about you, it will be very difficult to approach a public person and say that I'm a genius and I want to work with you. Maybe it will work once, but it may not work at all and you'll be made a laughingstock. First, you should have your own portfolio. They should become sufficiently known that people talk about you. It's not difficult, but it is necessary. Then two public figures can deal with each other. When people started to write about company, and it became easy for us, but not very much. Because if you approach a public figure, the public figure approaches you, starts asking questions. Do you need it as a flagship? And you need to have in your credentials the fact that you work with that or other person, because others will follow instead. These are well-to-do people, generally. They're solvent, so to say. And in order to hook one or two leader clients, which will have a following, I started by working free of charge. My own time and my staff's time is of no importance. Why I need this person as a client? No matter what sort of headache he brings to me, if I need him, then everything will be free of charge in my office. And there are plenty of such people as myself. Now the situation has slightly changed. He should have his service free of charge, and a person accepts it. I will rather pay him for my own services so that people are without me maybe 15 or 20 years ago. It so happened that as of today, yes, these people started to come to us, and we have significant sales, the same comparable to a small metal works. But first, you should win over these hearts and this market and this handshake with all the accompanying difficulties. And I'm not here to give you advice to such professionals as you are, but do not be afraid to offer services, even at the extra cost to yourself. If this person brings more clients, it will be a good business for you. Today, I set up 2 new areas in our bar college. I like to have collections of art which no one needs and they become popular. I play games which are of no interest to anyone, etc. It depends on my character. And I created 2 departments in our college, and I think that a good future ahead of them, because it doesn't exist in Russia. Our London office started to explore that, but I want to look into the sports, where our sports departments, because it's a separate layer of legislation which will evolve in that or other way, and arts department, because whatever is linked to art has a good future, starting from investment and down to publicity that it brings home to you. I have more or less clear idea of what I want to achieve in sports. It's difficult to talk to athletes for a variety of reasons. Let's not offend these people, but it's not easy. On TV, it was several months ago, I was invited to that Meldoni and drug story in sports. The show was moderated by Vyacheslav Fetisov, a good friend of mine, who was and is client, a friend of mine. But Meldonium was a new topic. It was interesting several months ago. And there was a coach who was accused of something, etc. It's a long story. And at this show, I understood that there is an opportunity, there is a window of opportunity, and to set up my own department, the first one, because no other law firm has it, a department which will deal with all sports problems. Well, it's common knowledge how much money is in sports, from football to basketball, from yachts to golf. Huge amounts of money, much more money than in the power sector, in my opinion. I came up to this coach. I thought that his wages were not too high. I think my driver gets about the same amount. The coach who trained plenty of champions and who was accused of feeding drugs to his sportsmen. I came up to him and said, I will defend you free of charge. He opened his eyes widely, and we started to work. It was a half a year ago. Now we represent 4 major sports clubs in track and field events. Moreover, there are 2 clubs from abroad. All in all, we have 12 people, well, full-time or part-time in our department, and this number is growing. As soon as you start to work with one person, the entire structure, the entire layer of sports very easily spreads rumors. And it's everything very simplified and much more critical than in life. They have huge scandals. Well, signing and not signing contracts, agents fighting each other for football players and hockey players, a variety of problems, starting from referee to drugs. No one dealt with it. But why? No one paid attention to that, or a public figure was needed, or a public address, when from the TV screen someone said that I'll handle this case. And as soon as one football player came to me, it was followed, stand by his team, because all of them have problems. Sportsmen who don't understand anything, they are, let's say, virgins in terms of law. And they have plenty of cash. It's common knowledge. They have their own business. And they come with their pains to me and put all this stuff on you and quietly say that I came to that or this. and the news spreads very easily, and other people come to me. It's important to be a pioneer in the market, to be a pioneer in working with public figures. And public figures is an anchor of your business. What about their problems? The only thing I wanted to tell you is that when you start to deal with a public figure, you will never be able to come to an end. A public figure understands that he is a star. He trusts his life to you. He can call you in the early hours of the morning, that he has indigestion, and though his dog left him during their usual evening walk, etc. And you become his friend. He has hidden from everyone. He trusts you some things which he will not trust to anyone else. Thank you, dear. Thank you. I'm losing my voice. It's a big responsibility. Any more questions while I'm drinking this water? Thank you, Alexei Alexandrov from Nordic Bank, Riga. First, thank you for the pleasure to listen to you. And my question is, you are touching upon psychology issues, and vulnerable is very silly, easily taking offense. Risks of conflicts inside of the company when you deal with these clients. And you said virgin in terms of law knowledge. Does it mean that it is necessary to improve their knowledge in legal matters? How do you regulate? I will start with the second question. Well, this, you've merited your book. Yes, with the signature. I will start with the second question. Training. They don't have much time, but if you are interesting to him, he will listen to you. As a rule, when you are an adult person, he will fall asleep immediately. He said, he is a good lawyer, excellent, but I'm not going to listen to all this bullshit. Let him do it. Let him win the case, divorce me, save my money, etc. Save me from something better. That's all. If he becomes interested, he becomes your partner. He will ask questions. It's good when a person is interested. He should be interested in something. He needs something to start a dialogue. Dialogue is more interesting than a monologue. That's true. Therefore, his virginity sometimes is lost in the process, but not everyone can do it from the first time. And your first question, easily taking offense and vulnerability. It's not exactly the case. I have a client, his fate and his life is always in the public domain. It's Philip Kirkorov, a person in the spotlight. He doesn't take offense easily, but he is vulnerable. These are somewhat different things. Why he should take offense? Well, for a person that's a French composer and his lawyer who blamed him in plagiat, me and Philip Kirkorov did it that Russia forgot about Aleppo for a fortnight and they talk only Philip Kirkorov. Why he should take offense? He didn't take offense, but he was easily vulnerable. He was wounded that he is not a composer, that he is not a poet. He didn't write the lyrics or the music for which he was blamed in plagiat. And because he was easily wounded, well, he was prepared to make any steps. But as a result, there was no court. And the explosion continued for 2 weeks. He sustained that. A public figure has two positive things. He has an iron grip. He's used to the idea that the road is heavily populated with idiots who want something from him. He waited for a fortnight, and it turned out into a joke. But there are people who may take offense. But there is a Russian saying, well, people carry water on those who easily take offense. But as for easily wounded people, vulnerable people, they do not take offense very easily. Other question. Alexander Andreevich, you talked about development of a sports department, but as far as I understand, the market of those services, you'll be one of the few lawyers. Is there a conflict of interest? Sooner or later, a sportsman will blame a coach, and who will come? There will be no conflict of interest, because I will soon be, I will have to represent the other party, and we don't have this right. We don't have the right to meet the other party without our client's permission. I will tell you about a case. A lady, an aged lady, called me, a colleague of mine, called me at 2 o'clock in the morning and asked for an urgent advice. 2 o'clock in the morning, it's I am asleep, my favorite pet is asleep. Not to say anything about other people and pets in this apartment. Yes, he said that I need your advice. I will come with a client to you. She's prepared to pay a huge amount, like 4 times higher than the cost of our daytime consultancy. I put on a gown, and we met in a dining room. We talked for 40 minutes. I did not understand properly what was the urgency of the advice, and forgot about this story until 1 p.m. the next day, when her husband called me the next day and said, then he wants to be my client, and I understood everything. I couldn't say hello to him. Once this lady visited him, they just deprived me of a client. They unsettled me immediately. The conflict may be only when you have some relation to the other party. As for sports, sports is a huge source of work, of orders. The more of other lawyers there are there, the better is. You see that furniture shops are in the furniture street. It's a very rare case where the furniture shop stands on its own. And in all the cities in France and Italy, you go to a street and you have that furniture shops one after another. In the Vendome Square, they don't say sausages for unknown reason. They sell all in diamonds there. In Place Vendome. If there are plenty of lawyers in sports, it's good. I believe we're the best. I have grounds to believe so. If we look at our ratings and my credentials, but let other people do this business, at least to gauge their performance against myself. The book is yours. No more questions. Good afternoon. Ladies first. My heart with you. Thank you for the very interesting presentation. Tell me, please, where there are plenty of public figures, there are plenty of journalists as a rule. Could you share some of your secrets and rules of dealing with the journals, excepting rule number 1 that you mentioned at the very start? 2 books. This is my first collection and a recently published volume. Others are stories from a Moscow lawyer. Excellent question. Journalists are bloodsuckers. Well, just parasites. They don't need any positive news, because positive news are not interesting. They need only ugly things. And therefore, because they attack you, you must feed them something they want to hear, so that they get off your back. You should not tell him anything about your client. You should give something about aura that you attack with your client. And there you can focus on there. But I must say that I had a case. I represented interests of a well-known businessman in our country, Ruslan Baysarov, against Kristina Arbakaite, fight for a child. Journals will just, ambushed me everywhere. I was in the country house. I went to WC, and there was a camera in the window. But it's it's easy to handle them. There are very few smart journalists.
So smart journalists are not that dangerous, but there are very few smart journalists. What does smart mean? The analytical mind. So the better you are at analysis, the smarter you are. But most journalists want just information. But you should throw this to them, but just make sure it doesn't involve the famous person. I'd say there are only 3% of smart journalists. So what they need is the information that they can analyze and write about. Of course, they don't make part of the crowd, and they don't affect the big market, but they do affect people that influence the crowd later on. So it's important to take them, to bear them in mind. So all mass media are waiting for the news, but once you give them the information, they begin to digest it and produce it. For example, sometimes I call some smart journalists and say, this is the news, you can use it. For example, the newspaper Kommersant that I'm working with. So a couple of journalists that are working there begin to check my information, and they give the feedback, and they say, yes, we have checked that, so we have now some questions, and you're ready for that. But the crowd is interested in what car a famous person bought, who he or she slept with, etc. Alexander, thank you very much. I just wanted to ask you how you manage clients' expectations and whether you take risks. I'll start with the second question. I risk all the time, and my risk is what the old people learned and taught me to do. I had doctors, gynecologists, and lawyers in terms of my ancestors. So they shared the law of lawyer's profession. One happy client will tell his friend that he's happy. One unsatisfactory or unhappy client will tell everyone about his or her experience. And this is related to all sorts of professions, including lawyers. Of course, the risk is constant, but you can always minimize it. I will never deal with a case where I can't help, because, you know, when I realize that I can't help, I understand that person will be unhappy. So, for example, we won't be able to win a case against an offshore. You know, we won't get any results. Can you please sign that you agree with it? Because this is throwing just money down the drain. So the risk is always there. I've been successful so far. I lost only one case, and I'm very proud of this. It's a separate thing, and that was a case against the First Lady of Moscow. I represented Forbes at that time, but again, it's another story, and it's not the time to talk about it. So, of course, it has to be a weighted risk, and it's important to think about it. Whenever a client comes to you, the first thing to understand would be whether you can really help your client, whether you can see what the final result would be. And then this popular expression, the chemistry between people. Sometimes you see some people that you feel they make you feel disgusted. And for example, when you see that some customers lie to you because I have to record everything, I have to trust him, I have to believe, I have to rely my information I have to base my information on what he said. So that's they are all very important factors to consider, and money comes second. And speaking about the management and their desires, well, they want the same thing, just the extent is different. Everybody wants to live better. Everyone wants to live better, and the more you get to know a person, the better you are to help him. I have mentioned several times, I have investment bankers that come to see me every week. They work in private banking all over the world. I was always confused with them because nobody was interested in my taxes. And everybody came with their problems. For example, I work with the Swiss banks or Liechtenstein bank. In Liechtenstein, I get 1.5%, whereas he is different, but the risks are much more. So nobody really told me how the Russian legislation changed, except for one institution. Nobody told me what's going to happen if you do this and that, and this is our advice. I have a very busy schedule, many days ahead of time. I know my schedule. So, for example, I can't give 3 billion for investment bankers, but we usually discuss quite a substantial amount of money. So I explained that I have a busy schedule. I'm going to play golf in the morning, so I'm going to have 2 hours. If you want to come, please come and join me. Oh, no, I have to go to Zurich because my wife and my children and my car are waiting for me there. Why is it so? Just because he doesn't work for himself. He doesn't really care whether I become his client or not. He'll find somebody else. He's a hired employee. He operates with other people's money. And, I felt such a huge disgust because of that. It was disgusting. And until I met a right person who told me about all the headache I was supposed to have with money. So that's what happened in my profession as well. If you want to understand a person, you have to spend a lot of time with him. I have been interested in psychology for a very long time. I write articles, I write stories about it. Actually, I should get another book for you. So when I speak with professional psychologists, I actually often use psychologists. I ask, have you ever been to your client's house? Why should I go to a client's house? I think it's very important to visit your client at home because, for example, it's very important to see how this person lives, what kind of environment he has in the family, because from what he says, I can imagine that his wife is a real bitch. I have to see his wife before I go to the court. Who else does this? No one. And then people come to me and say, oh, I want to work for you. Why are you so successful? Just because I do it this way. I'll give you another example. There's a special person who just goes to different court trials and listen to how the different judges speak. Because if I use your vocabulary, you would become interested in me and you'll do the way I want. Why don't you just take one linguist who is going to go from one court to another and record different expressions used by judges? It'll just cost you 100,000 rubles per month. If you want to understand what this person thinks, what kind of life he has, you have to follow him everywhere. You have to know everything about this person in order to bring him what he wants. That's how the market is working. If you offer services which is in demand in market, then you'll be successful. If you offer services which are not required by the market, you won't be successful. So you have to know the person very well. One final question from the speakers, please. Thank you, Alexander. It's been very interesting, but I have quite a professional question. You mentioned about the Department of Sport, and now you're thinking about setting up the Department of Art. Why did you decide to set up a Department of Art? Well, one famous person likes this word, multipolar. It'll be a multipolar answer. First of all, I was thinking about my older daughter. I was wondering what she was going to do. I sent her to Sorbonne. She is a graduate of Fine Art Department. She is now going to come back to Moscow. She's going to work here in Russia, and she wants to be a lawyer. So I was thinking how I could combine these two things. So I invented this department. Another thing is that I'm a collector, and there aren't many professionals on this market. No one deals with art, apart from some lawyers that work for museums and just sign agreements between the Pushkin Museum and Prada Gallery about, providing the pictures for temporary exhibitions. So I'm a collector, and that's why I know all the legal issues related to that. They are related to heritage, fake works, insurance, exhibitions, copyright. I think that's sufficient for the volume, $50 to $60 million per year. That's what I said before I sent my daughter to study at Sorbonne. There are a couple more questions, so I've got two more books for two questions. Thank you very much, Alexander. You mentioned sport and arts that are new markets for Russia. if we think about 10 to 15 years from now, for example, where do you see the revolution? Would it be robots? Would it be smart contracts or IT-related things? There are many such things in America, but not everything makes its way here to Russia. Well, speaking about robots, there are many in law. But I guess you mean a different thing. You mean automated processes. And, for example, there are these coins, bits. I don't understand anything about it. I think I should hire some specialists that will observe these trends, because I guess it has a very big future. Speaking about robots and robotization, the robots did not create something themselves. They were all created by people. And, I don't think there'll be a robot who will become a Homo sapiens. But of course, some things have their own future, and maybe not many people understand this and pay their attention to this. Like many years ago, I arrested a Sputnik from one of the Central European countries because of the debt. Why don't we think about arresting some points on the orbit? Nobody has thought about it. I don't know why. I don't know. Maybe people don't read newspapers, or maybe they read just headlines. So, there is a certain number of points on the Sputnik that has been distributed between the states. For example, some Ivory Coast, for example, has some point that costs quite a lot of money. You can't put your satellite on that point. You have to rent this. So it's a normal market situation. So nobody thought about this in material terms. You can arrest it. So I thought that maybe at some point in the future, when we have, after we establish the Department for Sports and the Department for Arts, I'll think about space. I'll think about cosmos, because it gives a vast space for work. I'm going to give you the book. So the final question, right? Have you ever come across with protection of business reputation? For example, when you work with search engines or social media, and you also mentioned that there were many people that had a similar qualification as you have. But now there are less people like that. Is it due to political or demographic reasons? Do you mean politicians? No, you said that in the past there were more lawyers like you. No, I didn't say like that. I can't say anything bad about my colleagues. Okay, then about business reputation. How do you work on the internet? Like a genius. Okay, I'll tell you about the internet. It's really difficult when people come to me and their servers are located somewhere far away. And we have to sue someone. So what I do, it's my know-how, is to have a trial with yourself. So I take a text that my client doesn't like and publish it in some magazine or some other friendly publication. Let's say it's like the newspaper about workers in taiga in the Urals. Then I win the trial. They give the reference where they got the article. I receive the solution from the court, saying that the article was recognized as a libel, an insult to the dignity, and then I have a precedent. And then I can do whatever I want. I can shut down the website. Or I just ask to remove certain kind of information because I have a solution from the court. And my last question for you as a gallerist. I'm not a gallerist. You're a collector. Yes, I am a collector. So, since the objects have subjective value, do you sometimes get disappointed about some of the works that you bought some time ago when you were younger? And can it happen to your clients when they get disappointed? Well, one of the clients that the whole world is writing about it is Dmitry Rybolovyev, who actually had a similar situation. So somebody used his cash, and Dmitry explained that he wanted to sue that fraudster, and it's right. I can tell you that there are two types of collectors. For example, Dima Rybolovyev is collecting based on the ear. He knows that Picasso is good, so that's what he goes for. I never relied on my ears. I always relied on my heart, because what I collect are things I really love. I don't care how much they cost. They give joy to my eye. They give joy to my visitors and guests. And for example, I collected things that nobody was interested in, and that's how I created a very big collection. I made some discoveries in art, and Italians gave me an award for that because I discovered important things related to the 20th century culture. They wrote books based on that. So I do something which is not so obvious, but later it becomes trendy. But I don't care whether it becomes more popular or not. Of course, if I'm tired of my collection, I will sell it. But so far, they are my favorite things. I'm very happy when people come and enjoy these works. Of course, it's very nice when you bought some work of art for $10 and now they're thousands of dollars. I am not going to keep you much longer because I know that you're hungry. Well, 6 years ago, I was at Sotheby's auction in London. I actually was in London to do my own business, and I came where precious things were sold. They belonged to Edward the Eighth. Edward the Eighth was a very famous figure who wanted to marry someone that the court didn't approve, and Madonna and Barbara Streisand wanted to buy a bracelet for £500,000. So as a result, the price went up to £1 million. Lots of cries, and then the next lot that was announced was quite interesting. That king abducted, and so it's a very famous story. But anyway, the second law that was announced, he kept, beating his hammer and kept saying the watch that cost $50,000 in a leather case. And, so anyway, Madonna was buying that bracelet, and nobody cared about that watch. So I bought this watch. Sotheby's called me the following day and offered the price twice as much. Then a representative from Buckingham Palace came and offered £250,000 for that watch. Actually, they shed light on the life of that couple, and the story continues up to now. This royal couple calls me and offers to use a lodge at the horse riding competition. Or, for example, they offer that I become a member of the club headed by prime ministers, but it's so boring. I nearly fell asleep together with my dog, Jessica. So it's like a play that continues. The crown needs this watch, but I don't think so. I think I need this watch. Yes, I have bought this watch. I gave a lecture about the history of this watch. This doesn't, I don't make money, but I really enjoy having this watch in my collection. I had a really good time here. Thank you for your attention.